Okay, so question number 2, it says the terminal side of an angle theta passes through the point negative b, comma, negative 1/2 b. Where b is greater than 0, okay, so what they're saying is b will not be a negative number. In other words, my x value will be negative and my y value will be negative. It says calculate the values of the trigonometric values, okay? So we're going to use the reference angle on this, but here's the trick to this, all right? My reference angle down here, is theta, okay? But I need to keep in mind that my x value will be negative, right? So what does that mean? Well, whatever value for x I have, right, this value here is a negative b, where b is a real number, but it's positive. And then down here, this is negative 1/2 b. And so this lives in the third quadrant. That's kind of important because we can do all the trig stuff, but we have sometimes the values are positive, sometimes the values are negative, and we got to keep track of it. All right, so how did we do that last time? Well, the first thing that we had to do is we had to think in terms of the triangle, right? So I have a right triangle that looks like this, and I'm drawing it separately because it's a little cluttered in there, where this is theta. Remember that my y value is like my opposite value, right? That's across from the angle theta. My 90-degree angle is my hypotenuse, which is really the radius of this unit circle, right? Because we're imagining, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the unit circle. It could be any circle. So we're imagining like a circle like this, right? Let me change the color on that. So we'll change that to red. Okay. So we're imagining that if I rotate my angle around, there's a point that exists, x comma y, and in this particular case, those values are negative b for x and negative 1/2 b for y. And so then this side right here would be my x value, which is really the adjacent, okay? And then they give us the values, right? So my x value is negative b. My y value is negative 1/2 b. And then I got to figure out what r is. All right, so this is not fun. So we said in a right triangle, a squared, and I'm going to zoom in because we're going to need a lot of space on this. So I'll zoom in here. We said that the Pythagorean identity or theorem is a squared plus b squared, and be sure to write this down in your notes. The more you write it down, the more likely you are to remember it. But in a right triangle with trigonometric functions, we said that's like the opposite plus the adjacent squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared, right? Well, what is the opposite? Actually, I wrote those backwards, so it doesn't matter though. It would be y squared plus x squared is equal to r squared. Now, the reason we're converting it to x and y is because they give us the y value and they give us the x value, because they give us negative b, which is my x value, and negative 1/2 b as a y value, right? Like this is x comma y, just to recap. So then I'm going to plug in negative 1/2 b squared for y plus negative b squared, and all that's supposed to equal r squared. Now the reason I need all three sides, because when I do the 6 trigonometric functions, 2 of them, actually 4 of them, if you include the reciprocals, are going to need the radius or the hypotenuse. So I need to know that. So remember, this is like negative 1/2 b times negative 1/2 b, and then I can tell you this one right now. Negative b times negative b is just a positive b squared. Well, the negative times the negative is going to give me a positive. What's 1/2 times 1/2? You multiply across, right? The 1 times the 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. It's positive because the negative times the negative is positive. Then I have b times b, which is just b squared, plus b squared, right? Because I'm just bringing this down, equals r squared. Now this is technically 1b squared, and this is the tricky part. This is where I lost you guys on the other problem. But I can think of it in terms of 1/4 b squared plus, I need a common denominator. So 1 is the same as 4 plus 4 b squared equals r squared. Now I'm kind of running out of room, so I'm going to take this line. 1/4 plus 4/4 is 5/4. Right? You just add the coefficients, right? I'm just going to add this plus this, and that tells me how many b squareds I have. I have 5/4 b squared. Now the interesting thing is I want to know what r is, so I'm going to have to take the square root of this. So I'm going to have to take the square root of this. All of these are factors, okay? So what I can do is this is a property of square roots or radicals, is a fancier word. I could take the square root of 5 times the square root of b squared all over the square root of 4 equals r, right? Because the square root of a square is just itself, the base. So then I get the square root of 5. What's the square root of 2? Or I'm sorry, I said the answer. What's the square root of 4? 2. And what's the square root of b squared? Just b. Whew. That's a lot of work. But now I did all of that so that I could start plugging stuff in. So to go back over here, whoops, I'll leave that up for a minute. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay. Oh, you guys can't see that. Let's do this. All right. So way over here, I'm going to start, and I'm going to need the room. I'm going to say sine of theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. We did a review packet yesterday, and you guys handed it in. I write a lot of stuff down. And the reason I write it down is I'm trying to get to that magic number 27, right? Also, I want you to understand it, but I'm noticing you guys aren't writing stuff down. Well, one, when we take notes, that's for a grade. If you write half the stuff down, you're going to get a 50% on your notes. It's an assignment, okay? But more importantly, every time that you write down that the opposite equals y and the hypotenuse equals r, it goes in your brain. You'll memorize it. It only takes a second. By the way, my hand still works. I'm not collapsing from fatigue. It's not that much. Just write it down. And what you're doing is you're studying for the test by just writing a couple things down while you're already here in class anyways. And it's for a grade. So what is my y value? Well, it is negative 1/2 b. Well, what is my r value? Oh, this is crazy stuff, right? Square root of 5 over 2 b. Now remember, we are dividing by a fraction, so therefore we would multiply by the reciprocal. Oh, you know what though? Don't the b's cancel, right? Isn't b divided by b just 1? So what I end up with is negative 1/2 times the reciprocal of this stuff, which is 2 over the square root of 5. Now, what is 2 divided by 2? Well, 2 divided by 2 is just 1, right? So now I have a negative 1 times 1. So this is going to be negative 1 on the top. 1 times the square root of 5 is just the square root of 5. Now, this is technically the answer, but I can't leave it this way. I have to rationalize the denominator. How do I do that? Does anybody remember? Yeah, we're just going to multiply this by the square root of 5. Remember, whatever we do to the bottom of the fraction, we also have to do to the top. This is like the square root of 5 squared, which will always be just the base, right? And this is